Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and
Georgia. Welcome to The Deep Dive. I guess, Andy, if we were power rating podcasts on our preview
16.
series.
I joked with this. I joked with this about Dan.
You got there without me even asking.
Yeah, I joked a little, and Dan was like asking me. He's like, "Oh, you're not excited about?" I'm like, "I'm always excited about podcast. I'm not excited for possible outcomes for these teams this year or maybe next." Although I did come around a little on Atlanta, and I'll give you some of my silver lining. Which again, a lot of it isn't for 2022, but there is some silver lining in the. Is there a name for the city of Atlanta?
Well, I mean, they hosted the 1996 Olympics, kind of a big
Outcast USA.
You're talking about like Stankonia?
Stankonia?
Or just like
I got a coalition of the willing.
They have a Hotlanta is for sure up there, but they have a they have a whole creative television series named after the city of Atlanta. They are the most recent World Series champions, Andy. Atlanta's got some juice.
They do have some juice. No, it's funny too. If you Google, and a lot of it is just like, hey, I should double check looking back at it. And if you Google like 2011, 2021,
the dirty South,
Minnesota, it'll autocomplete to Vikings. You type in 2021, Kansas City, it'll complete to Chiefs because NFL is king, even if there is other franchises. Atlanta auto-completes to the Braves because the 2021 Braves are a little more exciting than the 7-win Falcons. And I mean, jumping right into it.
Well, the Hawks also, they went to the NBA Eastern Conference Finals.
That's true. It's true, but
Hawks got a little juice too.
Yeah, the biggest parts of the 7-win Falcons, and I'm not going to touch on a lot. We'll get into it as we touch in 2022. But from Cleve's preview, his first sentence, the 2021 Falcons ended up posting the 4th worst point differential in the NFL, despite winning 7 games.
Yeah.
And then Football Outsiders, we called them the worst 7-win team in NFL history. And it wasn't just subjective. That's based on their DVOA of every team that's ever won 7 games. And it was a weird, like we said, with the point differential. They won against bad teams, and they won in close games against bad teams. And then when they'd go up against good teams, they would get roundly shithoused, trucked. I think there was a 2-game stretch where they lost 68-3. One of those games was at home. I think it was Dallas and the Patriots. Like that, it was a clear, like they were at least Mertens. Like if you were a bad team, you could not beat the Falcons, and if you were a good team, you better beat the shit out of the Atlanta Falcons. And it was the last hurrah for Matt Ryan down there.
They were the team emblematic Mendoza line.
Yep. But yeah, it was tough. Just you end up losing. Maybe, Matt Ryan is the face of your franchise for the last 15 years, but Julio Jones is not far behind. You end up getting rid of him. You bring in a high pick at tight end that you need to try to incorporate into this offense that had a bad offensive line and was missing some maybe other pieces, and you're shoehorning a running back or a wide receiver into running back and honestly kind of making a go of it. And really the schedule was a little lopsided like that. You played some bad teams and you played some great teams, and honestly, like whatever, I guess you still ended up with the top 10 pick. And I think the biggest thing, and again, I mentioned the Football Outsiders preview, they went over this extensively. The biggest thing was they didn't sign Deshaun Watson. And the way they phrased it too is like it puts them in a spot where they can rebuild, because like extending whatever is happening right now by getting a good quarterback rather than a stopgap was probably a bad choice. So that's where I am a little rosy on the long-term projections for the Falcons, but short-term it was rough. There was a lot of holes to fill in this offseason. I don't know, what's your takeaways from 21?
Well, when you look at the win-loss and you see 7 wins, your first question should be how how in the world did this happen? I think you laid it out well. It was a very easy schedule, and they took advantage of the bad teams that they faced. Yeah, not a good win really to be had on here. Congratulations for beating the Giants, the Jets, the Jaguars, the Panthers, the Lions. That is 5 of your wins right there. Outside of that, I guess the Dolphins were kind of in the mix for a playoff spot. You beat them 30 to 28. I don't even remember if Tua was in that game. He probably was coming back from an injury. I don't remember. You beat the Saints 27-25. So you got 2 very narrow wins against kind of middling competition. But again, neither of those teams made the playoffs. So you did not beat a single team that made it to the dance. And like you said, the teams they faced that did make it, beat them with what's the right? I was thinking beat them with extreme prejudice.
Extreme prejudice.
Extreme prejudice. Yeah. So I think the fair conclusion coming out of last year's performance is this is a bad team, and I think you actually have to go back in time a little bit and really kind of reflect on what happened in their Super Bowl loss to the Patriots and how that kind of turned the entire franchise into spoiled milk, because last year was sort of the end result of that. They never realistically had a plan for succession in the offensive coordinator role after Kyle Shanahan moved to greener pastures, got a head coaching gig. Never filling that role was a huge problem, certainly. You can kind of point to that core never reaching their promise in terms of winning a Super Bowl, I think, because, Matt Ryan, I think he is the highest compensated quarterback of all time who does not have a Super Bowl victory off the top of my head. Believe.
Yeah, and
Stafford and Matt Ryan were kind of in the same mix, and now Stafford's got his. So Matt
Ryan, part of that, the rebuild for 2022 being so difficult to try to fill all those holes is the dead cap space. And I mean, again, it's not like, oh, they shouldn't have traded him, but like, yeah, they should have. Like, it was time to move on. That's fine, but like this year, it's 40 million for dead cap, I think, right around there.
Yeah, they're taking their medicine.
I think it's the most ever. And that's the thing about a rebuild. Like, you don't just say, all right, we're rebuilding now. All right, go pick up a bunch of young players and it'll be fun. Like, sometimes there's a really, really, really painful year where, God, now I'm wondering if I'm mixing them up with Carolina, who I looked into a little bit of cap room stuff too, but I think they ended up, it was them. They ended up extending a couple players, and often, you say an extension is a reward for playing well. That can be part true, but sometimes an extension is used to clear up cap space. They ended up extending a couple players just so they could fit in their rookie contracts after the draft. Like the cap was very, very tight for this team, and that's tough when you have so many holes. So yeah, it's going to probably be a rough year in Atlanta, and again, it's fine.
Before moving on to this year, I will say 2 other things about 2021. Number 1, I was bullish on this team coming into the season. I thought they had a high ceiling, and that was because I thought Matt Ryan still had some juice in the tank, and because I expected Calvin Ridley to do a very serviceable job of taking over as wide receiver 1. And we had cautious optimism that Art Smith was going to bring the good things from Tennessee. And, potentially, maybe he had some visionary aspect to his idea of how to run an offense that was going to click with the pieces in place and lead to some magic. I think I hit eject on that take about halfway through week 1 against the Philadelphia Eagles. There was some clear plays in the first game out of the gate where it was like, oh my God, this offensive line is horrific. Matt Ryan does not have the skill set in his toolbox at this point in his career arc to be able to kind of become a mobile quarterback on the fly. And if they can't protect him in the pocket, and if his guys aren't getting open, and if the running backs are running into stacked boxes and Art Smith is insisting on blowing early down runs on those minus EV plays, then this team is going to struggle. And struggle they did. Again, how they got to 7 wins is the big mystery.
What was your favorite Falcons moment from last year?
I don't have many at all.
I have one for sure.
Favorite moment, the loss to the Washington football team was probably the highlight because they had absolutely no business losing that game. I believe there was some shenanigans in the 2-minute drill where the refs were reviewing plays and stopping clocks, and crazy stuff happened to give the Washington the time they needed to put together that game-winning drive. But losing that game 34-30 was absolutely ridiculous. What was your highlight?
The running play that they ended up the touchdown that they ended up reviewing and overturning because he like gave himself up, but they ended up having to remember, but they still had to give him the taunting penalty, and it's Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that one was fun. So I'm trying to. I
Man.
don't even remember who that was. I'm not even 100% sure who they. I think it was the Bills game. Like it was against a good team. So yeah, like it was. Oh yeah, Sam's talking about it. The Bills game. So Dan says the Falcons won in New Orleans. Season was worth it. Yeah, that I looked at that. That was the one part of the season that was puzzling to me was the New Orleans game, and Jameis didn't have a very good game, and I guess that was probably their signature win. It's always nice to beat a division rival, especially on the road. But yeah, they're working on a rebuild here, and they still even with 7 wins, they had a top 10 pick. They had some room to grow at a few spots, and the roster turnover is, I don't know. How do you feel? Like a lot of it feels like, well, this is all we could do. Like, hey, a guy left and we have to fill in, and we
No. The entire offseason, you nailed it off a little while ago. The entire offseason was, let's get Deshaun Watson and solve the quarterback position for the future. And if that fails, then we are burning this to the ground. And it failed. And they didn't get him, and they are taking all of their medicine that they can this year. And I think that's, again, in the same sort of spirit as the Tennessee Titans in the way they dealt with their offseason. We're going to talk about 2 teams today who are in similar low likelihood of winning anything this year. And the way that the Falcons are doing it, at least, has greater, kind of intermediate success potential than the way that the Panthers are. And I think realistically, this Falcons team is, it's not going to be easy to replace Matt Ryan. Surely it's going to take time, and they don't have the answer on the roster this year. But that's not the point. Next year's quarterback class freaking rocks, and they have set themselves up well to take their medicine, to lose a bunch of games, and to get one of the top 2 quarterbacks coming out in next year's draft, one of whom presumably, they may have first choice of, frankly. And even if they don't, there's not a lot of other teams kind of in the mix for most losses that really look likely to address the quarterback position. So I think Atlanta plays out their season correctly. They learn a little bit about whether they want to stick with Art Smith for the foreseeable future, and they set themselves up well to get a quarterback for 2023 and beyond. And, if that's where you are as a franchise and you're clear-eyed that this year is not going to be a year where you're trying to win games and you're just going to take your medicine and kind of clear the books, more power to you.
Yeah, although I will say I do worry that in classic Atlanta fashion, like there are a few teams, because I don't know who. Drew, give me your 5 teams, and let's count Atlanta as one. So give me 4 other teams who you think have the highest likelihood of ending up with the top pick.
In order?
Just no, any order. Just give me 4.
Texans, Bears, Falcons, and Seahawks. That in that order, in my opinion.
I said besides the Falcons.
Oh, I'm sorry.
To get you to 5. Give me one more.
Texans, Bears, Seahawks, and the Washington Commanders.
So and that's where I do, and
Probably the Giants, really, but
the
Washington.
the Giants and the
Washington
Jets
in there.
Giants and Jets have something to say about that. But a couple of those teams like Houston, if they end
Yeah,
up that
Jets. I
bad,
should have included the Jets. That was my bad.
like, and that's the thing. If Houston ends up that bad, that means Mills didn't work out. They might be looking. Seattle certainly would consider taking a quarterback. The Jets at that point, if it's gone that bad, maybe they consider, hey, we're doing the thing where we move on right away because it just didn't work out. So like, there are some teams that I worry, but it is a rich class. There'll be a couple of good quarterbacks, and yeah, again, it's so hard to say this right now. We're sitting here in August trying to predict like who's going to be after who in the first part of the draft next April.
Teams like the Bears and the Jets are going to have to make decisions about sticking with their current quarterback after a poor season for a third year, or taking a more likely upside quarterback in the next draft. And those are going to be tough decisions. The Falcons, in my opinion, are not going to have to make that decision. I think it is going to be painfully obvious after this season plays out that the quarterback position is number one you need to draft. And guess what? If you spent your high draft capital the last 2 seasons getting an future all pro tight end and a potential wide receiver 1 on your team, that is a great vision for, hey, there's a quarterback rich draft coming up. Let's position ourselves to strike in that draft. And I think even if they do accidentally win too many games this season or other teams are ahead of them that prioritize quarterback, they may have enough draft capital to trade up. And, we know that the guy who's pulling the strings from the GM standpoint used to be a Saint. And the Saints have had absolutely no, they have acted with enthusiasm in the trade market to move up and get their guy. So I think Falcons are probably destination number A1 to take a quarterback next year in the draft. Yeah. And you can choose. You want Young, you want Stroud, you want some other party. You get to figure that out. Watch a lot of college. If you're a Falcons fan, watch a lot of college football this year.
Watch some college football.
Watch some college football. Seriously.
So we'll move into that rookie class too, because the one situation where they're not looking for a quarterback is, hey, guess what? Desmond Ridder came in and it worked out. Like, hey, this team was and I really no chance he reaches the level of what we saw in San Diego / LA. But like, hey, guess what? This team wasn't good, a la Justin Herbert, but managed expectations, not 4,500 yards Desmond Ridder, but like Desmond Ridder was very good, and this team was still bad because it was just so full of holes. But You're saw
describing the Davis Mills experience.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, the likelihood of that is probably sub 5%. So
yeah,
I'm not thinking that's really going to be something we're going to expect. Although I do think we'll see some Davis Mills. We'll see some Desmond Ridder, which is fine. Like, when you're in a stopgap year, you might as well. You spent a draft pick on him. Might as well see if you have something, or at worst case, like, hey, this guy is probably somebody we want to hang on to as a really, really feasible backup or a stopgap as we bring in another rookie. But yeah, Drake London, huge dude, top 10 pick. I think he was hampered by some injuries coming into the draft. He didn't do much combine stuff, but there's enough film to see, like, yeah, and especially if that works out. And what's Ridley's contract status? Like, is it it's still early enough in his career where, like, hey, guess what? If Pitts takes a step forward and London works out, you have 3, because let's just call a spade, and he's not a tight end. Like, he is absolutely he's a wide receiver when it comes down to it. You have 3 pretty good wide receivers. It's not a bad situation for a rookie quarterback to come into, especially if you have some other draft capital and you could spend that on, I don't know, maybe an offensive lineman somewhere down the board, and take some punts on offensive linemen in the 3rd round, and maybe find some in free agency. You could be, Stroud or whoever, it could be coming into a good situation. Yes, and Cordarrelle Patterson, hopefully they find some way to not give him 150 carries so he can survive longer in this league and play a little wide out as well. So going forward, and again, the London thing, we haven't seen anything from him yet. He isn't done shit as a pro. It has to work out. And Desmond Ridder, I guess he played a lot in college. That's something. I worry
I don't
about
100%
some of
know
these
how
guys
this
who
works.
just didn't play. Like, like Trubisky had that fun year in 18, but it's like that was the biggest thing. It's like, shit, this guy has like 10 starts. Like, what are we really doing? Is that how you're evaluating quarterbacks? At least Ritter played a bunch. You have a bunch of tape. It was a thing. So I don't know. And then some of the other draft picks too. They filled in defensive lineman in the second round, linebacker in the second round, got another linebacker in the third. I mean, it just was one of those things where I think they were kind of set up, and we talk about this in our draft episode. Some teams, they have to make specific moves. Like, it's weird to evaluate the team that won the Super Bowl's first round draft pick because they're in such a weird roster spot. It's like, can we really chew their ass about this? But like when you're a team like this, it's fine. Just take the best player you think is available all the way down the board because more than likely it's a spot where you need help. And I don't know, I'm reading some camp reports. There's a bunch of guys that are in the mix for some playing time again for the same reasons.
I'm willing to completely suspend any type of judgment for this current regime and their drafting acumen based on the success that they had, that at least that Terry had when he was in New Orleans as the talent evaluator. Particularly notable that the Saints drafted some incredible defensive talent in his years there. And so, I don't know these guys from Adam, but if Arnold Ebiketie and Troy Anderson turn out to be household names in a defense that looks a lot better this season, we shouldn't be surprised based on the track record. It's notable that the top, and again, like, they're doing stuff the right way. They're using their top end draft capital to take swings on guys who could potentially be game changers from the skill position standpoint. And now all they need is a plug and play quarterback. And I don't see Ritter as that guy. Again, I think at best you're expecting a Davis Mills-esque season from him. And if he does well enough in a limited enough sample that the Falcons tie their hopes and dreams moving forward, then that's going to be tough for me to kind of get over, frankly, because I think they are a better destination for a premier quarterback at the top of the draft next year. But they have some bright spots on this roster. There's no denying that they have more bona fide blue chip players in the building than some of the other teams we've talked about, including the Texans. And the other teams in the discussion, including the Bears. Like, there are more blue chips on this roster than the Bears have on offense and the Texans have on defense. I could tell you that much.
And it's funny you brought up the Bears too, and I mean, a really big point of contention. And it feels like we've done this with like 5 or 6 teams where it's like, hey, this team has some good points and some solid players and some positional groups are good, but the secondary might suck so much shit that it won't matter because you can't hold leads that way and you can't get out to leads if you can't stop anybody in the passing game, which the league has turned so heavily to. And granted, eventually wide receivers should be a big strength of this team, but like, that's their strength, right? It is this defensive secondary, and they've got a couple of players. I don't know. It's funny how many teams can you name where it's like, man, I really like both of the starting corners for this team, and
Yes.
usually those teams are good teams. It is really weird. It's like, man, I really like this defensive secondary on a team that I might have winning 3 games.
I think we've seen enough tape now. AJ Terrell is the guy.
His ceiling is
CB1.
He is the best quarterback in the league.
Yeah. He is a bona fide CB1. He got there quickly in his career arc, which means you have him under cost control. You can kind of extend him with a fair deal, keep him in-house. Like, that is a guy you build around 100%. Casey Hayward is on the wash side of things, but still at least a hell of a lot better than the guy you had starting opposite Terrell last year. Safety's a little bit of a question mark, but pretty clearly the secondary is the strength of this defense. Grady Jarrett is a nice defensive tackle. You have virtually nothing going for you to start the season from a pass rushing standpoint, but there's nothing to say you can't generate some effective snaps out of some of these young guys ultimately. It's just going to take a little bit of creativity, and I don't 100% have a read on whether Dean Pease still has a fastball as far as the defensive coordinator goes, but presumably you could get something good going, from this unit. But the offense is a problem, frankly, and that's, I think, ultimately what holds this team back from getting wins. And again, if you're the Falcons, I don't think you want to win. I think you want to set yourself up to draft a quarterback. Like that should be, this should be the Stephen Ross tank.
You want to
I
be
don't
that
want to.
Angels
Yeah,
tweet
I don't
where
want
it's
to
like, hey,
pay
guess what?
Art Smith for sucking, but he should suck.
Mariota ran for a 93-yard touchdown, and AJ Terrell had 2 pick sixes as the Falcons lose 46-21. You want some fun highlights from a team that loses to these teams they should lose to? Get your quarterback.
Yeah. And I mean, again, like I like what they're building. I like that they had 2 second-round draft picks last year. That was kind of the ideal. They had 2 seconds and 2/3. Like that's great. Like getting 4 swings in that window of the draft, in the draft like last year's draft that wasn't top heavy. That's awesome. And if they hit on any of those guys, this defense is bouncing back quickly. I didn't think anyone that walked out the door is really like a big deal in terms of, you lost some serious blank. Like Matt Ryan, of course, is maybe the exception. Like that's a huge downgrade at the quarterback position.
I mean, Matt Ryan and Fowler, just based on how much you're paying them.
Yeah, you keep Matt Ryan in the build. Yeah, that's fair. That is very fair. Good. But if you keep Matt Ryan in the building, you're risking winning too many games to get your quarterback. Really. Mariota doesn't present that same problem. Neither does Desmond Ridder. So it's I think it's going to be a long season in Atlanta, but I think ultimately they have shortcut the rebuild to the best degree possible, and they at least have a guy making the draft choices who's really good at evaluating talent. Which I think has me as like a soft buy on this franchise in the long term. The big question, more so than any of the vision from a franchise standpoint or any of the talent that they've acquired and the way they're going about it, the bigger question is what's going on with Art Smith. And is he actually capable of learning on the job and improving on what was a really, really poor campaign from him, I thought, in 2021.
And not only that, but to go from a pure pocket passer to, hey, guess what? Your 2 top quarterbacks, as Dan is pointing out, like Dan says in the chat, they really should go college-ish on offense. Heavy RPO, running plays, moving the pocket, like switching it up. Like if you have a bad offensive line,
that's how you accidentally win.
That's how you, well, and that, to be fair, yes, teams will try to win though, despite our best efforts to make sure all the bad teams tank. But like, if that's where I'm worried about them. And again, it could be a good thing, like we're saying, but I'm worried that, hey, guess what? We have to kind of run our offense completely different based on the type of quarterbacks we have on the roster this year compared to Matty Ice, and then that going poorly as well, which again could be a good thing. Although the Fontenot stuff, Fontenot, but did I say the
Terry
last Fontenot. I usually Frenchicize names extra, and I didn't do it today. So Terry Fontenot, like you said, some of the success we've seen in talent evaluation, especially that one draft. Do you think that's what they call it, New Orleans? That one draft? I bet they do.
Well,
because
like
that was
an all-time.
There's been a couple, but
2017 draft for New Orleans was an all-time, at least in our time covering the league. That was the best any team has ever done in a draft, and it hasn't been close. But New Orleans also has been just in general over the last. They've been on like a 5-year heater, really. That was the peak, but they're good at scouting talent, and they have good positional coaches, presumably good coordinators, presumably that are coaching those guys up, or at least like there's synergy between who they're choosing and how they're using them so that they get the most out of a lot of these guys, which I think is a pretty important part of the process. And Fontenot is as good as you're going to get in terms of trying to replicate that in Atlanta against, somebody in division who's doing it. So, if you were to tell me that close your eyes, coming from the future in next 5 years, Atlanta wins more playoff games than the Saints, I'm nodding. I'm like, yeah, Yeah.
The Ricky Williams draft. Yeah, we can't go all the way back to the Ricky Williams draft was an all-timer in the exact opposite way. But yeah, it's again, I'm
The
looking. I
internet
read
would
some
break if that happened, if that kind of a trade happened today.
that's high on the list of like things you wish Twitter was around for, because my fucking lord. But yeah, the second round pick, the linebacker / D. I mean, he's an edge. They call him a D end in a lot of places, but he's probably going to get some starting time at outside linebacker.
Yeah.
And then you're going to see probably some rotational stuff from the other guys. But I'm reading, again, everything I'm reading from camp stuff is they're pretty excited about both the safeties as well. So it could be a nice step forward for this secondary group as a whole. And like Patrick pointed out, and you pointed out, the offense might stink. So good secondary plus bad offense equals 13-12. Saints win. Just some nice under games for this team.
Well, I guess here's, if I'm buying the Falcons long-term stock here, this is what I need to know, right? If I'm Fontenot and I have installed Art Smith and I have self-evaluating and looking at what he did and looking at how the team performed and making critical evaluations, like I need to see him grow as a play caller, play sequencer in year 2 in some way without accidentally winning too many games, which is it's a tough to needle to thread.
Yep.
Look better, do better, but don't win. And then I also want to see how he does at developing Ritter. Really, like that's important. If Arthur Smith can show you that he can take a raw talent out of college at quarterback position and develop him in any way, I think that is your signal that, okay, we keeping him around.
Keep him.
We draft a QB next year, and away we go. Right? I think that's what matters.
Ritter is your practice girlfriend.
He's your practice.
To tell if Arthur Smith's ready to go to the prom with the homecoming queen.
Fucking goodness.
So, I want to throw, before we get into schedule and odds and all the stuff on this team, again, it's funny how I'm playing devil's advocate with positives, like, because we're so bought in on, God, I hope this team loses a lot of games because it's great for the rebuild. But are you worried that a good wide receiver room will have this offense playing better despite a pretty bad offensive line that really didn't get help? Bringing in new quarterbacks, that you have a rookie and a retread, but you have a pretty high-end prospect. You have Kyle Pitts, who at times was amazing. Brian Edwards from the Raiders was one of those. He was one of those guys where it's like, this guy has it, but they have a lot of receivers. Like, he was just kind of maybe buried a little bit on that depth chart at times. Auden Tate has had some moments. And then you have a bunch of tight ends. And it is this weird offense where they're going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets. I feel like they may have even signed another tight end today. I think McCole Pruitt ended up on somebody. I feel like he went to Atlanta, but they got Ferkser. Which you could put Ferkser and McCole Pruitt, and McCole Pruitt's a good blocker, and then you could have Pitts out wide instead of wasting him at the end of the line sometimes. So bright spot for the offense, possibly that. Plus, again, Cordarrelle Patterson. We'll see what else they do with on the running backs. You have Damian Williams there, and D'Onta Foreman, I feel like is that where he ended up?
No.
So, I mean, there's a
no. They got Cordarrelle Patterson, Tyler Algier.
So it's Algier and Williams. D'Onta Foreman ended up in the other team we're talking today. So, like, enough skill position players, but it's one of those where it's like, hey, this is working, or oh shit, this is all for naught because they don't have a viable quarterback or an offensive line or a game plan from their, the mind that's running the offense. I think it's probably the latter.
I think, again, this is really tough to dissect. Like this year,
like you said, the sequencing and the overall game planning just didn't seem.
It wasn't good.
I'm trying to think of there's not a superlative I want to use. Not good is fine.
You know what? Hey, you want me to give him a little attaboy? He did better than Dave Culley. I don't remember any times that Art Smith I don't remember him declining a penalty on third down and then punting. So he's got that going for him. But realistically, this is not a good enough quarterback room and not a good enough offensive. Like, if you have a great offensive line and you put a retread quarterback behind him, maybe it works. If you have a good quarterback and you put it behind a makeshift offensive line, maybe it works. But putting those two ingredients together, I think, is going to keep this unit grounded in terms of expectation. And I think fundamentally, that's the saving grace for not accidentally winning another 7 games and taking yourself out of the Bryce Young sweepstakes.
We're going to see a bunch of these because they've said, hey, guess what? We're playing starters in the preseason because there's no Aaron Rodgers on this roster that we need to protect. Like, guess what? Everybody's in.
Yeah.
I'm guessing Pitts isn't going to be playing deep into the third quarter in every game, but everybody's playing, I guess, which if you bet preseason, that's a fun, it's a nugget that the market's already reacted to.
Here's one thing for you. There is a little continuity. I mean, like, you're setting up future continuity with your offensive line, the way that they've handled last year versus this year, right? Like, like there were a couple of positional changes, a couple of new bodies, but you've got big boys in place now. You have a left tackle who's serviceable in Jake Matthews that I think this unit plays a full season together, stays relatively healthy. They maybe are the 24th ranked offensive line or something like that. And then another year together, maybe they're like top half. Maybe you add one more piece, second round pick after you get your quarterback in round 1, right? Like there is enough talent and enough that kind of growth potential with this group that next year maybe they're okay, but this year combined with Mariota, forget about it. This year combined with Ritter, forget about it. Like, there's just sometimes too many plays that are just big time negatives for them.
You will see from like a bad offensive line is like, hey, guess what? This was a bad offensive line, but now we're gonna go get our stud left tackle. And the guy who played left tackle, like, he sucked shit, but his footwork wasn't horrible and his arms were a little short. But you know what? He would not be a bad left guard. And we saw him play 17 games, and we kind of know what we have. And he has some continuity with the offense. Like, sometimes you can move, you can move some of these guys around and still get some, still get something out of them. I think Carolina's doing something like that with one of their tackles. So, yeah, I guess I'm there. So
I think both Matthews and McGarry were above replacement level last year with room to grow, which is what I think matters. McGarry, especially because he's young. The interior, Wilkinson, Hennessy, Lindstrom. I didn't have positive grades on any of those guys. Lindstrom the closest. He was okay. But yeah, I think realistically, like, you're going to get continuity over these guys playing together this season and taking their lumps. But that's the important part. Take your medicine.
Well, Dan, I wasn't saying Jake Matthews sucked. I'm just more of a broad example of what you've seen teams do with, hey, we need to get our left tackle. But to be fair, it'd be right tackle in their case.
They have depth too, frankly. If Eddie is the second stringer, Jalen Mayfield is the second stringer right now. Like, that's decent depth at offensive line. Like literally, oh man, if they fuck this up and accidentally win too much and don't get a quarterback, or just talk themselves into Ritter, and Smith never really grows into this role, and this is kind of a good rebuild nucleus, ready to pop, and we never see it, it's gonna suck. And that's what I'm most worried about with this team, frankly. Because
Felipe, frankly.
Yeah. I'll add one. We're on the topic of gambling at wide receiver, and it's worth noting that was the funniest part of the Atlanta Falcons 2022 so far, was learning that
they had a
Ridley was donking.
Policy.
He was playing donkey parlays. And he's suspended for the balance of the 2022-23 campaign. They have deferred his 5th year, which they exercised. That is next year. So he's basically on the club 5th-year option next year for $11 million. He is off the books this year, which is interesting. So if he happens to be an asset next year, because Calvin Ridley, if he's good for $11 million, somebody's going to want that. Maybe the Falcons want that next year, right? Like if you develop London, if Kyle Pitts is as good as we think he can be, and you bring in a new quarterback next year, then I think this Falcons team it has short circuited the rebuild.
And Patrick brings up a good point as we switch over to the schedule. They do play a tough schedule of opposing defenses. And if you're using last year's metrics, and we'll talk about this a couple times, like where do you think Baltimore's defense ranked last year compared to what they actually should play as? Like some of these teams will be better than, what we're giving them credit for. If you want to just say this is the level of opposing defenses that we're gonna be playing against. So they're gonna play a bunch of, hey, guess what? Like right off the bat, there's the Rams, there's Cleveland, there's Tampa, San Francisco. I'm just thinking of these pass rushes against that beleaguered offensive line. Maybe that's, I tried to give it a little positive spin, saying the skill position players outside of the quarterback and O-line might buoy things up, but boy, these pass rushers they're going to face in a game in and game out. The Chargers, even Washington, that's like a highlight of their team. Baltimore, Tampa Bay again. So it's going to be a tough year for whatever combination of quarterbacks they throw out there. And don't see any. What color is your favorite? Blue? I don't see any favorite.
No, a couple of pick'ems at Carolina.
Let's go.
Versus Carolina, your pick'em. At Carolina, your +3 on TNF. Oh God, why did they give us that shit sandwich on Thursday, week 10?
Yeah.
What the hell?
People are asking about Jameis. Are you grabbing the 5 with the Jameis news? I've seen numerous reports that the Jameis thing is not really it's kind of a nothing burger. He just rolled his ankle and sat out part of practice. So he should be fine. So
injury prone.
Probably want no part of that game. He is a little injury prone, although he can see better now. So yeah, there are a few double-digit dog spots.
Oof, they are outside of a touchdown. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They are outside of a touchdown 5 times. That's not good. The game week 2 at the Rams that is +13, Andy. Biggest spread on the look aheads all season. That's it right there. Nobody with a lower win probability on their schedule than the Falcons at the Rams week 2.
A little rest disadvantage plus the trip all the way across the country to play the Super Bowl champs, who happen to have a good pass rush. And
by the way, you finally get a little breathing room going up against a team that's not expected to do so great in Seattle. Well, you got to do it on a week where you're traveling back across the coast after playing in LA. Do you?
I wonder if they stay. I wonder if they
stay on the West Coast. Should.
That'll be interesting.
Unless the goal isn't to win.
Yeah.
Unless you don't want
to punish the players like that. Like, hey, guess what? We're flying across the country 4 times.
But they got to learn to fight through adversity.
Yeah. A ragtag group I don't see a lot of wins here. If they do get any wins, again, it depends how bad the Carolina situation is. We'll get to that yet today. The Chicago game feels like the most likely win. A good secondary versus what we've heard from, like, if your main strength is secondary and you're playing the Bears, whose wide receivers are some random dudes basically right now. N'Keal Harry might be playing by then again. It's not that massive an injury, but I don't rate N'Keal Harry as some game changer for that offense either. So Chicago Bears, I'm calling it right now. The Falcons, their floor is 1-16. They're beating the Bears that day.
Okay.
Ceiling's probably 5 wins, though.
First 7 weeks of the season, 7 else. Unless Jacoby Brissett has an absolute poops his pants when you play Cleveland. Right? Maybe you beat Drew Lock in Seattle, but boy, did they gave Seattle that game.
I was going to say that's the most likely, I think. Yeah, but it's a bad travel spot. Though.
Look. If we learn after week 2 that Atlanta stayed on the West Coast and spent a full extra, like a mini camp on the West Coast preparing for that Seattle game, then it is man the hatches, bombs away. Falcons money line. Don't think twice. Don't overthink it. Kind of a moment. If they travel to and from across the country, then I want absolutely nothing to do with betting that game, any way, shape, or form.
I want to find out they just did like a week in wine country. We
That'd be
didn't even
nice.
practice. Like,
That'd be nice.
Like, hey, we're not traveling back, but we also don't want to beat Seattle.
Wine country, beautiful that time of year. Beautiful that time of year.
Right
Yeah,
in September.
right around the crush. Everybody, all the
stomping.
wineries were having their parties. It is that's the time to be there.
Honestly, I think the Falcons should hire me as their travel secretary. But
no,
yeah, rough stretch. If they do win, it would be because they really do take that Seattle game seriously. I don't see them beating Cleveland unless Brissett sucks absolute shit. But otherwise, that's the Carolinas. Both Carolina games, Pittsburgh and Chicago.
No, let's zero in on week 8 to week 13 because that's where it gets interesting.
Yeah,
you play Carolina twice. You got Chicago, Washington, and Pittsburgh in there. You want to know, Andy, there are 4 teams in the NFL that I am like real out on. It includes Carolina, Chicago, Washington, and Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And you get to play them all in that stretch. So, like, frankly, like, if you're going to get some wins, that's when it's going to happen. If you're going to want to build the confidence of your young crew, like, do it there. And then I think after your bye week, you just shut it down. New Orleans, Baltimore, Arizona, Tampa Bay, like, yeah, if you want to compete in those games, cover some spreads, that may be a good bet. But I think, frankly, like, there will be opportunities to buy low on the Falcons if the market can, is just like can't get over the fact that they start 0-7, which is the expectation.
And you won't. So you have the Seattle game, which is in Seattle, and then you will not leave the Eastern time zone again until December 18th at New Orleans.
Wow.
Which is like central. It's central time, but it's also like an hour and 20-minute flight from Atlanta.
Very easy flight. Yeah, very easy.
So they don't have that is a nasty little stretch of travel at the beginning with the double West Coast, but from there on out, really centralized as far as staying east or at home, and then some of those teams are still very good, but yeah, that middle stretch feels like that's where they get a couple of their wins and make some people sweat that regular season win total a little.
You don't think they get to 5 though?
No, God, no. It is the lowest win total in the NFC. If you, I don't know if you had anything else or you want to pull up odds.
Realistically, they split with Carolina. I'm already annoyed that we have to do a primetime game with Atlanta at Carolina week 10. Atlanta's could be 0-9. Carolina's going to be like 2-7. That's gonna suck that Thursday night football game, and there's not even baseball on that time of year. World Series is over. I guess his NBA will be going, so
World Cup prep.
Yeah, World Cup prep. Okay. No, I think realistically, like, I don't think you're sweating a win total on these guys.
I think in the middle of the season they're sitting at 3, and you
split with Carolina and you win 2 of 3 against Shy, Wash, Pitt. You win 2 of the 3 of those, I think, which means you finish the season 3-14 probably. I think that's where we're at. So maybe 4.
Oh, would you take it under 4.5 then? If you had to bet anything on
that's my most likely outcome.
Yeah, I'm not excited about sweating extra win totals, but no. It did open a little higher, and it has been bet down. They are projected to be the highest ranked draft pick in the NFC, but yeah, Super Bowl, NFC South, playoffs, yes, and win total over. None of that is bettable. This team, maybe that minus 1,300. No, like how do they get to 9 wins? I'm fine with that.
It's
there's not a bet to make on this team.
No, I don't think so, really. Again, if you could buy long-term futures on them, they're probably priced incorrectly because they're going to be in the mix sooner than some of the other teams that are similarly going to suck this year. That's about the most nice thing I can say.
Yeah. And somebody, Fleabit Peanut Monkey asks about the spreadsheets you guys have. Ask about it on Twitter. Have somebody get you the Discord link. There's a deep dive Discord run by the inmates that producer Dan will drop those in during the show, so you can download those right from there. Have somebody else get you a link. I have like 3 DMs today asking for that. I'll get to those later on when I'm laying around. But plan of betting attack. There's going to be some there's going to be some unders I like.
Yeah, I think so.
If you get me up against a team like Chicago and that
AJ Terrell, that guy's awesome. If you're going up against a one-dimensional offense that only has one real weapon in the wide receiving room, you're going to keep that team in check.
Yeah. So not I don't know, betting on this team in the preseason. Maybe that's the only way to bet it. So
dude, let's assume Deshaun Watson's not available week 4. That Browns total is like 7 points too high. Like that, talk about it. That is a stone cold under game. If I've ever
I'm
seen
fine.
it.
I like that. I'm surprised we didn't think of that when we got there. Especially we should look for weather games in the schedule too. If there's some weather games and you have a shutdown corner. So
yeah.
All right, let's
great call.
Spin over to another team.
Well, betting plan of attack. I think somebody did have one question for you.
Oh, what was that?
Art Smith, first coach fired from Christopher Davis.
I think Dan finally convinced me that blank is still convinced enough that they're a team that needs some continuity and isn't going to do something like that. It would have to go pretty poorly. Like if things really go badly, nothing's off the table. There's a guy every year where it's like, shit, this guy is on the hot seat suddenly, and I didn't think he was. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. The number's just not big enough for me.
Yeah. I don't really have a read at all on Arthur Blank as an owner. Did he get rich like robbing trains in the Old West or something? Like he has that look about
ghoulish.
Him. Like it's the mustache. He looks like a villain. A Western villain. So I don't have a read on that at all, frankly. I can't believe it. Right at the transition again.
Right at the transition, fucking naked HD XYZ comes in.
All right. Well, I am ready to fire Art Smith if that answers the question. Like I'm ready to
Home Depot, really.
If we do not see growth or the ability to develop Desmond Ridder into somewhat of an interesting prospect, then I think Arthur Smith needs to go. And I don't think they have the coach in place that can be the guy for the boon. And like,
but I think it'd be an end of the year thing.
You know what? Like it has a little bit of Zach Taylor whiff to it. Like to keep him around just long enough until like the rebuild is working and then Arthur Smith is entrenched. And like now all of a sudden, like their ceiling is low. You know?
Yeah, I get it. Oh, let's talk about the actual only bet you should probably ever make on first coach fired this year because god damn it. I don't like to use the word lock, especially when I'm talking about starting quarterbacks. Because we'll get to Seattle someday, but boy, howdy, like I have not come across a year where it's like, how does this not be the first coach fired? Like, and again, anything can happen. Nothing's for sure. And he's heavy chalk, but yeah, we'll get into the Panthers here right now, and I'll give you a countdown so we can do another podcast. 3, 2,
1. Welcome to the deep dive. Cat's walking around the keyboard. Hopefully it didn't screw us up here, but let's talk about some cats and a team and a franchise that is lacking identity in a way that puts them very, 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 very squarely in the do not bet category for me. Like they got just enough talent on this roster. They got just enough just enough potential when things are going well that they're going to win too many games to be in contention to really draft the quarterback of the future. But at the same time, like if they even sniff relevance or success, it's going to be because of luck and people are going to get pats on the back or paid or job security out of it. And then the next thing you know, you wake up one morning and you are the Cardinals or the Texans of the Bill
You don't want to
O'Brien
wake up
days.
and be the Cardinals.
Like that's kind of where you've put yourself, where you've taken these gambles at the quarterback position now for the third straight season, if you're Carolina, and there is no upside. Either it works and you win too many games to get a good quarterback in the draft, or it fails and you are now a third straight season of wasting the prime of some young players on an offensive roster that otherwise has enough talent to succeed in today's NFL. And it's, it's not like Dave Tepper doesn't get it, but the NFL is all about the quarterback position at this stage. You either have one, you're trying to coach one up that you've drafted, or you do not have one, in which case you are scrambling for scraps, and the Panthers are scrambling for scraps.
Yeah, and you either have one or you don't. And Darnold seemed like it for a couple of games, going back to 2021. I should mention, as I forgot again, but I don't have a good segue today, but I will mention that these previews are brought to you by the Circa contests. All our preseason content is, and guess what? We're going to be out there Friday signing up. I don't know how many you're entering. I think I already have a piece of some other people's entries, so I'm probably just going to do one each, even though Survivor is just burning money for me. I'm so bad at it, but I do like the other contests. And guess what? It's all rake free. $12 million, lots of cash to be given away. I think if you win, you even get a ring. So
nice.
Go out there. Yeah, if you're out there Friday or Saturday,
get some hardware.
I will buy you a beer. One beer. That's the limit. Domestics only, not the tall. It has to be like a 16-ounce tap. That's it. That's all you get. But I will see you out there if you come out to Vegas this weekend. We'll be hanging and signing up. And then it's Gil says he's either first coach fired or coach of the year because of the expectations. That is kind of funny. But maybe the most bet week one game I've seen in a long time for like 2 months out. This fucking Cleveland Carolina game, because of the quarterback situation for both, as it was just supposed that they were going to try to get a quarterback that wasn't Darnold, and that we'd see a suspension on the Cleveland side, which is very, very, very likely at this point, obviously, because they've already come down with one that's in the appeals process. But yeah, Carolina last year, they gave up a bunch. We talked about this in the Jets episode. Good for the Jets for both of their trades, getting pieces, getting capital for a couple pieces that they wanted to get rid of. And yeah, the Darnold thing really, really looks worse in rear view even. And now they've this whole charade about and we'll get to this year. The charade about the quarterback fucking competition is just killing me too. But this team was 3-0, and then you go back and look, it's like, you beat the Jets and the Texans, and you beat the Saints as they were just trying to get their feet under themselves with a new quarterback starting it out for the season. Like, that wasn't a good 3-0, and then all of a sudden it devolves quickly down to 5-12, and 2 straight 5-win seasons for you hired a guy from Waco, coached at Baylor. What's their mascot?
The Bears.
Oh, and then after 2 years, you guys say, "Hey, what's that bear doing?"
What's that bear doing?
What is
that bear doing?
What is that bear doing? Because
that was the highlight of last year's. That was the
Rule. I could watch that a million times. But Rule was really highly touted as a not only like, hey, this is a can't miss thing, but he brought Joe Brady, and Joe Brady became one of those casualties of, hey, it's not going well, and we need to throw someone under the bus, and this is a good spot for that. And yeah, 2 straight 5-win seasons. Yeah, no wonder you're a hot seat. It is year 3. It's put up or shut up. And last year was ugly at times. We saw the cumulative effect of Christian McCaffrey running. I think he had 700 touches in 2 years. Like, that catches up.
Oof.
And just poor quarterback play. A few missing pieces on a defense. Once the defense was okay, and then we had some injuries that really started to hurt what was probably going to be a really good defense at times. And spiraled down to, like we said, a 5-win season that finished 4th in the division last year. And then, the Joe Brady thing did feel weird. Like, is this what we're doing with this team right now? So I don't know. Thoughts on 21, Drew?
It was a failed gamble on Sam Darnold that you could see coming a mile away, that we talked about having no upside, and ultimately broke poorly for you, but you still at least ended up with a top 6 draft choice. The problem was you didn't have any other draft capital last year. That was a huge issue for me in terms of like vision of building this team. Somehow they had traded away so many assets that they had no day 2 picks at all. No one in the 2nd or 3rd round. What? Like, that's bad. Like, you do not want to be in that position. They ended up trading, I believe, up into the 3rd round to get Matt Corral, which, again, what are we doing here, guys? Like, what is the vision? I really don't think they have thought this through, and maybe they're going to learn the hard way, and ultimately, how to be an NFL franchise, and the owner's going to have to learn this the tough way, or maybe it's just never going to happen. But I thought 2021 went exactly as it should have gone in terms of win-loss. Did they finish the season with the longest losing streak, losing their last 7? I think they did.
Probably.
They finished the most poorly, I think, of any team in the NFL.
It was rough, here, especially the people that were really pumped about this team after 3 games. And I mean, there were bright spots. I mean, they beat bad teams, but
well, the NFC was. We talked about it a lot in the offseason last year. The NFC was wide open. The NFC South everyone had an easy ass schedule. We didn't really talk about that, but I guess we just did with the Falcons. Like, they had an easy schedule last year. So did the freaking Panthers. But again, their best win was it the 34-10 over the Cardinals, and was that even a Kyler Murray game? I don't remember. I think they beat Colt McCoy in that game, but I can't remember. No good wins on this schedule, and some bad losses down the home stretch. Not competitive whatsoever in your games against Buffalo, Tampa, or New Orleans down the stretch. Also got destroyed by Miami. Just everything down the stretch was bad. And they probably needed to move on from Rule, but they decided not to, because who knows why. So he enters this season as the coach on the hottest seat. However, again, like, we don't have a track record of Tepper one way or the other firing or keeping a guy for a full season. So he ought to be your favorite for first coach fired, but the price isn't good enough to get involved, in my opinion. And I think ultimately the schedule this year and the strengths on the team this year are probably good enough that they are looking at a middling kind of a finish, which means, Rule, the discussion about keeping or firing Rule is not even really going to be that easy at the end of the season, I don't think, because there are some true bright spots about this team in terms of talent on the roster. It just doesn't exist.
I have a lot of like silver linings, bright spots, like a lot of things that, hey, this could go right if everything works out. But at the same time, like, the ceiling for this team is not a team that wins playoff games. Like, the ceiling for this team is probably your 7 seed that just gets wrecked by whatever division champion they get. So, like, 5 wins. I feel like we do see a team that eclipses the 5-win mark that they set 2 years in a row. And I don't know. We'll start with Baker, because I really hated Baker coming into the league. And that was the last year I tried to evaluate quarterbacks, because I think I liked Darnold and Rosen the best and hated Baker. Like, just everything I've done was wrong with quarterback evaluations. I don't do it anymore. And I think Baker Mayfield is a good quarterback. I don't think he has great in him, but man, this guy played through a couple of pretty, damning injuries for how a quarterback needs to operate. And just was it a torn labrum? Like, I mean, sure. He had a
non-throwing shoulder.
But he had a messed up shoulder and a bad knee, and he was playing up there. And, you don't understand, Drew. You're in sunny Long Beach. You try having a bad knee up in the cold weather, baby.
I have a very
Like,
special fuck you for Baker Mayfield.
you can feel it in your bones. So, like, again, if he's healed up, true or false, this is a better wide receiver room.
True.
Yeah, I mean, and if he's healthy, like, again, I don't see him vaulting into this like, holy shit, Baker
Way
really
worse
turned this
offensive
team
line.
around. Yes, then that it is. Well, yeah, I mean, relatively, but from the 2021 Browns to the 2022 Panthers, yeah, it's a huge downgrade. But from the 2021 Panthers to the 2022 Panthers, I think there's chances it takes a step forward, which
Okay.
when you're in the basement, the only staircase is up, to be fair. But I think Baker has a shot to be okay at this stop.
Yeah, the same. If he is better than okay and elevates this
What
team,
is
I'm going to
the-
be really
what's the
fucking
fuck you
mad.
for him?
He just absolutely destroyed the Browns last year. Like by himself,
Yeah.
effectively destroyed the
Well,
Browns.
they kept
last
playing
year.
him, and he was injured. He was clearly not 100% at all ever.
Yeah, but the Browns were rostered last year where he
did have a couple good running backs they could have relied on a little more.
He barely needed to do anything really last year, and that's a playoff team, and he managed to fuck it up. And I think
A Wentzian effort.
Yes, and it was so there was so much bad juju between him and a good coaching staff that I hang that entirely on the player. There was so much inability for him to really kind of get the, kind of the other important voices in that locker room to play hard for him, that I hang that on the player. Like that Browns team was ready to contend for at least a couple of playoff wins last year, and it was dead on arrival. And Mayfield can, in hindsight, point to excuses about his health and fitness, but it doesn't change the fact that he performed the job of quarterback poorly for the Browns. And that ultimately kept them from succeeding as a team. And the idea that a fresh start means anything, that he can all of a sudden turn it around and be, all of a sudden be some disciplined player who's going to make good decisions, who's going to execute within the system, who's going to elevate any other player on this roster. I need to see it over an extended sample to believe it at this point. I think he caught some lightning in the bottle as a rookie, had a little bit of chemistry with Freddie Kitchens, which he then ultimately drove Freddie Kitchens out of the league, or at least out of the head coaching job, and then couldn't get along with Kevin Stefanski, which is an enormous red flag for me. Like, literally, you swap Baker Mayfield and Kirk Cousins last year, and Kirk is the Browns quarterback and Baker is the Vikings quarterback. I mean,
they're in the second week of the playoffs.
Yeah, I think likely. And I mean, I'm not here for these. I will be very, very, very late to the party if the rest of the world is glowing over Baker Mayfield on the Panthers winning hard fought games. Like, I will be like, other shoes coming. Don't buy into this. Like, this is not a team you should have power rated as a above average offense. Baker will ultimately destroy them. Like, it's gonna. I'm gonna be late to that party.
It's fun too, because once we get to the schedule, we're gonna see that this might be something that
I know. Schedule looks like it's gonna try to make that happen.
It's gonna make it. It's gonna make something like this happen if it truly is something we're gonna see there. And then just also too is the most fun thing I read in any of the previews. I read this last week, had to go back and find it, was that who's the offensive coordinator here, Drew? This is fun.
Oh, it's somebody shitty.
Yep, you got it. It is Ben McAdoo.
Ben McAdoo
did nothing but talk shit about Baker when they did the pre-draft evaluations. So that's I don't know. It's fun because the internet remembers everything, and that's awkward. But McAdoo's teams in New York don't really jive with what Baker does. I don't think. I don't know. We'll see. Like I think he can play a lot better if he's healthy and this offense works out with just like, hey, look at all these players we have. Like if Baker plays, baseline Baker Mayfield's healthy quarterback, and we have DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, and Christian McCaffrey, like this offense should not suck ass. And again, like the offensive line was real bad. That was an issue, but that was their first round pick. Ike Ekwonu is raw for NFL, and sometimes rookies come in and struggle right away, but they brought in a couple free agents and Bozeman and Corbett. Like they retooled the offensive line, and it should be better. It's still likely not going to be league average. That's probably their ceiling for this, but there's a lot of hope around this offense, and the defense was good. Like it, and that's again, we're gonna get to the schedule, and this feels like an absolute like there's a paper tiger moment to come around the October 16th mark where it's like where this team is gonna get pumped up similar to last year, but maybe even to a greater extent, where if they get some early season wins and things are flying and then suddenly they, get punched in the mouth, it'll be pretty funny for the market. But
yeah,
there's a lot of things that could go right that could have this team beating. And again, like we talked about the Falcons, maybe to a lesser extent, because this isn't the roster the Falcons had last year, but beating teams they should beat and then losing to, again, they face both Super Bowl teams. They face Tampa Bay twice. Obviously, like they face a bunch of good teams. They're going to lose those games. I think it doesn't matter how elevated this team is, but this team, like I said, with a bunch of coin flips / short favorite / winnable games in the schedule and all these little improvements, any sort of competent quarterback play, and like their ceiling is a wild card for sure.
100% true. This team could make the playoffs, and it wouldn't shock me. And it's not big, but a lot has to go right offensively, a lot, and a lot has to break their way from injuries in division, especially. But the blueprint is there for this team to shock and win the NFC South. I think it is. The offensive line that you brought up, though, I'm not sharing the optimism that you seem to be implying.
You don't think it'll get better?
So I have Taylor.
Can't get worse.
It can't get worse. I have Taylor Moton, however you want to pronounce it. I have him as better than replacement level. Corbett, Bozeman, and Jordan, I have failing grades on. Those guys, I do not. And again, continuity is a problem. All three of those guys came in from other teams, right? Corbett from the Rams, Bozeman from the Ravens, Jordan from Cincy. Ike Ekwonu, great draft choice potentially for the long term of this franchise, but expecting him to be viable as at the tackle position, out of the gate is asking a lot. Like I think Baker's going to be under duress. He's going to have to get it done the hard way, and he's going to have to take his licks. He's probably going to get hurt, frankly. Doesn't have a bailout at the tight end position. He's got some very, very, very high upside receivers to work with, particularly DJ Moore. I have DJ Moore graded as the third best Panther from last year. And he is a bona fide wide receiver one in the NFL. Definitely among the top 32 wide receivers in the NFL. Robbie Anderson was bad last year. Played a lot of games, but I'm okay hanging more of that on Darnold and his inability to get the ball to Robbie Anderson.
That's why it was hard to grade some of these.
His skill set failed so perfectly with what Sam Darnold was. His skill set failed because of Darnold's inability to make that pass. It was the only thing he could do to get open. So they just were oil and water from week one. And then Christian McCaffrey is tough for me to expect you're going to get a full slate of games. He played 7 games last season, and even that felt like a gift at times. He's he's too small to be given the the type of demand that they're going to have to, because his backups are Chuba Hubbard and Dante Foreman, and Dante Foreman's, I guess, a little bit better than Chuba Hubbard was last year in the replacement role, but it's a bad room if he's unavailable. So this becomes a two-man show between Mayfield and DJ Moore behind a sketchy offensive line in sort of the nightmare offense that gets Matt Rule fired. And I think that's like 40% of the outcomes. Really? This offense finishing in the bottom 5 of the NFL, I think, is likely. And I think realistically, if they surprise to the good, it's because this defense has some bona fide players. But here's the other crazy thing about the offseason, and the other last final point to make about these guys and why they don't really look like they know what they're doing building a football team. 2 of their 4 best players on defense from last year, they let walk. They had on cheap-ass contracts, and they let them walk. The best Panther, by far, by my grades from last season, was Jimmy Chin.
Really?
Jimmy Chin was great last year at safety. And he is, guess what, on his 3rd season, so he is a very young player. He was 2020 pick, so this is, he is very young and very capable of growing into the role that is sort of like a long-term guy you keep around on a good unit. Brian Burns, similarly, has 2 years of service and was excellent last year at edge for them and should continue to take a step forward. His stats were not hollow stats, as far as I could tell you. He looks like he will continue to grow and improve. But then 3 and 4 were linebacker Jermaine Carter and tackle Daquan Jones, and both are gone. And you want to guess who came in and got those guys? The Chiefs and the Bills. Like teams that have good
teams
systems.
That know nothing about building a franchise. That's also a bad sign.
That's a bad sign.
It's like when you're playing rummy and you put a card down and the guy can't grab it fast enough. Like, shit, I should have discarded that.
What a comp. Perfect comp.
My gin rummy comps have always been good, but
great comp.
Yeah. And the Derek Brown pick, I don't know how you have him graded. That's not looking
good.
It's not looking like they're getting
I had Daquan Jones that was clearly better than him. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point, and I have some. It's funny. I had like positive things to say about the offense, and now I have some negatives for the defense because like they have. Well, it's more of a recent negative. I am high on this defense, despite, like I said, Derek Brown probably not living up. Even gross tomatoes maybe not living up to some capital they used on him. But yeah, Chin, Xavier Woods, you have a good safety group. You have good cornerbacks. J.C. Horn is legit.
Yes.
Like that was a painful injury for this defense to try to absorb. But here's the problem: like half their secondary is hurt in camp right now. It might be a rough start to the season. Like Horn's foot is still bugging him. C.J. Henderson busted up I shouldn't use the word bust. He tweaked his ankle. Is going to miss a week, possibly 2. Keith Taylor just pulled his hamstring. Like they're not having a great camp for keeping people healthy. It's a problem. So if the secondary comes into the season healthy, it is going to be a strength. And like you said, they have a couple of difference makers up front as well. They're going to have the true combination of not everybody has everything, but if you have a really good secondary with a good safety duo and at least one shutdown guy and a pass rush, like you can hang with anybody.
Yes.
It just does not matter how good the other team is. You can hang with anybody if you can manage to, temper their passing game enough with the combination of a good pass rush and a good secondary and a smart coordinator calling it. I guess I really, and again, I said nice things about the offense and let you kind of piss on it, and it's fine. I'm not a McAdoo guy. Like I'm not excited about that out of anything that has happened. Like that's That's not super exciting to me, but I think they're going to be okay on defense. So that is the upside to this team. And like I mentioned, and we'll get to the schedule here, there are so many games that are a short favorite or close. I mean, just look at all these 1s and 2s on the schedule. Like a good defense has you as the kind of team who wins a lot of close games.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Like if they had kept the entire unit together last year and JC Horn was back healthy and CJ Henderson was emerging and you weren't going to be starting a lot of Dante Jackson in the secondary, then all of a sudden, like, I'm like, dude, this defense is good enough to get this team to the playoffs. Let's go find some playoff yeses and hold our nose. The Baker Mayfield revenge tour, here it comes. Like my entire, kind of temperature on this team is a lot warmer if they had a healthy defense, brought back the highlights from last year and, got health in the secondary, especially because there's a lot of young guys that are good that should be taking steps forward in their careers. And a lot of coin flips on the schedule that they could win with a strong defensive performance. Instead, I think this is just a bet the under and don't watch the game kind of a team.
Yeah, ish. I don't know what to do with a team like this. But again, this is what I was alluding to earlier when we said, what if this offense looks good early and then boom, we run into this spot where you play the Rams, the Bucks, and the Cincinnati Bengals within 3 weeks there. There's probably some spots where, and again, even the Niners, again, it's at home and the Niners have to travel to the East Coast. It's not an early game though. It is the late start time for an East Coast game, which is a little helpful, but I'm not high on Cardinals. I don't know what we're going to see from New Orleans right off the bat. The Kamara stuff, I'm still not even sure on his legal problems. I'm not sure if MT is fully ready to go yet. Olave's obviously winning Rookie of the Year, but they could still lose that game. But Cleveland, Giants, New Orleans, Arizona, and then even a bit of a decent spot where you have a good travel and a bit of a rest advantage against the Niners. Like you start 4-1, the market's going to come along a little. And then I don't know, like how low let's say they start 5-0 and everything looks hunky dory. How low can that Rams line go?
Oh man. Under 7, surely.
Yeah, under 7, and then all of a sudden, I mean, even at 7 in LA, 7.5.
It's a tough.
I'm
tough
not teasing
one.
I'm teasing the shit out of the Rams at 7.5.
Oh,
that's like the absolute banger of a teaser and essentially your first, real travel spot is we've only had to pop up to New Jersey once at that point. Just up the coast a little bit. So yeah, that's a beauty of a teaser. If that can come, I hope that comes down into the 7.5 to 8.5 range. So that's a banger of a teaser. And then you come home and play a good Tampa Bay squad. Get the Atlanta twice in 3 weeks. That's a funny little wrinkle they throw in sometimes. But again, Cincinnati at Cincinnati, Baltimore at Baltimore. And then I guess at least you get Denver at home. But at that point, Denver's had some time. These teams that have a big lack of continuity at an important position like quarterback, you'd love to play them a little earlier in the season before Russell Wilson gets his feet under the ground. So it's maybe a little ding against them, and then the bye. But they do have some teams who are cold on, and like you said, Pittsburgh, Seattle, the Arizona, the Giants and the practice reports coming out of wherever the hell they have their camp isn't super rosy right now either, despite what we said was their upside. So like you said, and we've been over this a couple times, even if they go get punched in the mouth at the Rams, at Tampa, at Cincy, Baltimore, like there's still enough, coin flip, easy-ish games in the schedule where they win 10 games and go to the playoffs as a 7 seed.
Yeah. I mean, 10 is high. I don't think 10's happening, but maybe an 8.
No, like the offense has to be working for 10.
The NFC
defense doesn't get you 10.
The NFC is such a shit show. An 8-9 team makes the playoffs out of the wild card is not crazy. An 8-9 team winning the South is not crazy. The South's pretty shit, man. Tampa Bay is dealing with some stuff. New Orleans is a huge question mark.
They're going through it.
They're going through it. God, dude, Baker Mayfield, though, he was such a fucking turd last year. He was just such a phenomenal turd. If he ends up being the good version of himself for a full calendar year and takes this team to the playoffs, I'm just going to be phenomenally annoyed. I don't think it's happening though. Frankly, I think this offense is going to be too bad as a whole. I think there's too many issues.
Like the odds aren't probably there for me.
Right.
Yeah, it is. It's a schedule imbalance, like a bunch of.
Oh yeah, it's big time. Actually, yeah. Let's point that out. You said it. I think
a bunch of easy teams and
4 of your first 5 games are home. 5 of your first 7 are home. Your one trip early in the season at the Giants, big fucking deal. You're right. You could pad your resume and get people feeling a lot better about you than you really are come that San Francisco Rams turn.
Your cold weather road game at the New York is in, back to school season where it's still nice up in New Jersey.
You think that they're going to be a trendy home dog? Like they're home dogs a bunch and under 3. Like, are they going to be a trendy home dog?
If they beat
Arizona,
Cleveland and they go up and look good and possibly end up 2-0, are they a home dog to New Orleans? It probably flips to a pick.
Are they going to beat Cleveland? No, they're not winning that game.
I don't know. I don't know enough.
I think that's the problem. Like that's just it.
Both
like
percents.
If J.C. Horn was like taking a step forward as a second-year cover corner this year, and you could say, "Hey, J.C. Horn, go erase Amari Cooper, and let's see if Jacoby Brissett can do a goddamn thing against our good defense," then that's like the under bet of a lifetime. And the Panthers very live to win that game. I'm not seeing that though. I don't think that's a good matchup for them in any way, shape, or form. I think the run defense is going to be tested. I think in general, Cleveland's pass rush is going to be nasty to match up with there. Mayfield could be running for his life a lot of that game. And we didn't even really bring this up when we were talking about Mayfield, talking about the quarterback decision. Like they brought Mayfield in wicked late.
Yeah,
they waited a long ass time.
Well, and that is so. And this is my final question before we get to the odds, is because I've seen this posed both ways, and I think one of these is absolute horseshit opinion. Because you're not super sure on Baker, and also he's an injury risk. Someone said, "Hey, splitting reps in camp is a good thing because it signals to the team that like, hey, we're going to give both guys a chance, and it's it's a fair competition just in case Darnold has to play at some point, and the team will have a little bit of belief in him." I probably don't subscribe to that. I think that's horrid. Like, if you traded for Baker, that means you wanted him enough to start him. Get him every rep you can. My God, get him with the ones.
Of course.
At least 3/4. I'm fine with Darnold getting some reps, but if Baker's not getting 3/4 of the reps in practice right now, you're doing yourself a disservice to get ready for week 1 because he has like 50 days. Once he got into camp, it was like 50 days, I think, for week 1. That's not a lot. That's not a lot to get ready on a new team, coming in. So I'm a little sketched out by how he'll look early.
Thank you for bringing that up, because that was a stupid decision organizationally among the many stupid decisions. That's a good one, a good thing to point out. And I think, God, somebody brought
just
it up in the comments,
the justification I saw
my point of where I was going with that. Like Baker poisoned that locker room and let the rest of that team down so aggressively last season. Like, if this is the Browns' best defensive performance we see all year, will I be surprised? No.
That'll be fun.
No. Like, go shut this guy out. Like, go hold the Panthers to 0 points, get the win, and, kind of exercise some demons. I think the Browns as a team have more they're playing for with the chip on their shoulders in that game than Baker does to go prove some revenge spot. What do you think about that, Andy?
Garrett has been known to swing a helmet at people. I wouldn't want to go up against him. Like, I'd be worried.
Who does he line up against?
If I'm Baker, I'm just like, fuck it. You guys start Darnold for 1 game, whatever. Like, I'm not quite ready.
Oh, dude. He's going to be
So
nasty.
all right. I thought this number was a little lower, but looking at, I can see the odds on the other slide right now, like Super Bowl, NFC, all that. Just they don't have, even if it is, hey, this team really overperforms, gets to 10 wins, which would be the offense clicks, the defense stays healthy and works, and they win all their coin flips. It's still not a team, like I said, that I can trust to win road games in the playoffs, much less several. So like Super Bowl, NFC, like that's out of the window. NFC South, the number's not big enough for me yet. But to make the playoffs, it's 4-1. I kind of want to go evaluate all my teams that I think are in the mix for the wild card in the NFC and start looking at some of those numbers. I think I might build a portfolio of 2 or 3 teams at the 3 or 4-1 range.
Say one of these gets to 7.
Because there will be 7 teams to make this playoffs. Like it is going to happen. And, like I really think, Minnesota, Carolina, or Minnesota, Green Bay, Tampa. I'm putting Tampa in the playoffs. Until further notice they're there. And then Rams. And then somebody has to win the NFC East. Like there's a spot or two that's there for these teams to be taking. The Niners are a good team, but they're starting a quarterback that we really, really, really have a wide distribution of results for. The Cardinals, I think, are ready to take a step back, and boy, like Bears, Lions, what's that leave us with? Seattle, the rest of the NFC East. Like there's a spot or two that's open, and I think you could take and make a nice little portfolio. Other than that, I think the win total is fair to possibly bet to the over a little, but again, you have to believe in Baker, and the fact that they're not giving him all the reps in the preseason has me probably hands off on that right now.
Yeah, I think they are probably going to be asked a question at some point this season when their easy games are, when the home coin flips are behind them and they didn't win them all. Are we really trotting Baker out here to try to chase a wild card berth, or are we seeing what we have with Matt Corral? And that actually begets maybe the biggest question of all, which is that make the playoffs, yay or no, overachieve, underachieve, 6.5. Where are we going? What are we doing? What is this? Right?
The biggest cheat code to tank without tanking is to be like, man, I would love to see what this rookie quarterback can do.
Yeah, of course.
against the Ravens in Baltimore. Like, how do you win that game? You don't. It just doesn't happen. So I'm gonna have to clip this when Matt Corral goes into Baltimore.
They really fucked this all up royally. Like they have created their own problems in almost every respect. Betting plan of attack. Right now, the Carolina Panthers are the 24th power-ranked team by market. That is about correct. 4 points worse than an average team on a neutral. That's a little low, but not enough to really get my pants worked up. Offense expected to be 29th. Defense expected to be 23rd. Offense correct. Defense a little too low.
Defense is low.
A little too low. So this is an under team. Betting an under in a game where, especially if once I think actually our best case scenario for betting this team, I think, is that Cleveland comes out and beats them 40-0 week 1, right? And just really just drills them for old time's sake. And then week 2, the Giants somehow eke out a win in a close fought game, and then the market dumps all of their Panthers enthusiasm entirely and ranks them as a bottom feeder, and then you're probably going to get some decent opportunities to bet some team total unders against them. You know what I'm trying to get at? I'd love a Saints team total under week 3, love a Cardinals team total under week 4, those kind of games where you have decent-ish matchups, your defense against their offense, and their Cardinals, Saints are expected to score 28-ish points in those 2 games, but they get 23. That's kind of how I feel how you're gonna have to bet this team. I don't think you can count on the offense on any given week.
Yeah, I can live with that. So, yeah, this will be a team I think you have to reevaluate every week. Like that's my betting plan of attack is spend more time on my game grades for Carolina than a normal team. It's probably a note I'm putting because I really have to see the why because there's more moving parts with this team than maybe a normal team.
Are there specific statistics you're going to look at for Baker Mayfield to try to figure out if he's clicking with this offense?
I don't think so. I think it's going to be more of the play calling, and maybe if the play calling is what I like or what I'm hoping to see from this team, but Baker's still not performing, maybe then yes. But I really think it's going to come down to how they use.
He regressed in everything important last year from 2020 to 21. He was on such a nice arc from 18 to 20, and to be under the same system with a plus EV coach and all of that talent on the offensive line and sick running backs and even, Odell Beckham Jr. for fuck's sake to start the season. Couldn't make it work with them. Like
and my last bit of cold water again is the McAdoo stuff. Like go look at those Giants teams. They didn't do Baker great. Not good, great with play action and extra motion. And those Giants teams did that well below average as far as the amount of the ratio of using that. Like if McAdoo is real vanilla and is not using the things that really made Baker successful when he was at his heights in Cleveland, then like how do you expect any of this to work? So I'm cautiously optimistic that they have the pieces, but McAdoo throws a real big wrench in my fucking theories.
I'm with you. I guess I'm going to be looking at just in general. He threw the ball away so rarely last year, and the number of bad throws was such an uptick percentage wise that I think that's going to be the telltale, and you're going to have to see it in the film. Like, is he playing within the offense and letting it come to him, or is he trying to force it? Right. And if he's trying to force it, he's going to make the mistakes that ultimately unwound the Browns season last year. He's going to lose that locker room pretty quick because I don't even know if anyone really likes him in the locker room anyway. And Matt Rule being on the hot seat adds a little bit of gunpowder to the whole situation. You know
what'll be fun after I just shit talk McAdoo. McAdoo at some point will be the
interim coach.
Head coach. God damn it. Don't need more McAdoo.
No, I think the defense is going to be the unit that shines, and Phil Snow is going to get a look. Phil Snow.
Yeah, maybe.
Phil Snow.
I don't know. It feels like they always would just lean on like, hey, this guy was already a coach once. Like he can lead the team for 8 weeks, right?
You're right.
It's such a bad reasoning. But it's how they do. Baker is a gunslinger, Patrick. That's why I love him. So, all right. Well,
I just clicked on Phil Snow's Wikipedia. This is his what job title in football? Number what?
7th.
Number 19. This is his 19th role with a football team, and before this role,
spent a lot of time in the Pac-12.
Yeah, it was a lot of Pac-12 football. A lot.
Conference of Champions, baby.
He was a linebackers coach for the Lions a little bit there. But a lot of college, a lot of Pac-12. And this guy started at Berkeley High School in 1976 as the defensive backs coach. Kind of wild. He went to Cal State Hayward. Philip Snow is not on my radar among assistants that I really expect to garner interest as head coaches this year, but I like him better than McAdoo. So got that going for him
by default. So cool. All right. Well, a couple more teams Wednesday, huh?
Yeah. I mean, for being our 16th power ranked podcast, that went pretty well, I thought.
Excited to hit up since it's going to be so hot out there. I'm not leaving the casino.
Oh, very excited to hit up Sin
Won the
City.
pool.
Yes.
Actually, I'll go to Stadium Swim. What am I thinking? Of course, I'll
Can't
go up there.
wait. Can't
So-
wait.
All right.
Yeah. You bet anything in Canada, by the way? Canada Masters? You bet anything?
Thinking about Kvitova here. Down a set
She
live, or
does not
I
look
don't.
great.
I haven't watched it though. Like I hate live betting a tennis player because they
It
might just
has
be looking
not
horrible.
looked great. Allison Risk looks the better player.
Okay, I will avoid it then. And yes,
Kvitova
dying.
lost the first set 6-2 in 29 minutes. It was not how you say competitive.
She's holding serve so far here. She's
No, she
slow-
lost. She lost her
slow
first
starter.
service, but then she broke back immediately.
Oh, did she? Oh God.
Yes.
I'm all right. I'm out. I'm out.
Not going
I'm out
good.
on WTA.
It's not going good. I played a little Storm Sanders plus 4.5. I just need her to now lose this match without taking it to a third, and that would be lovely.
Don't get too cute with Layla.
Plus 4.5. Leela, just take care of business. Don't take this to a third. Just get it done here. A tiebreak
right.
win. When
True.
you bet
We're
a
an
dog,
hour and 40. We're not going to do any more tennis. We're going to call it.
when you
okay.
bet a dog though, and the tie they
my
win,
God,
they win a
you're gonna do
tiebreak.
it anyway.
Oh God, it's the worst. All right, let's call it.
Let's call it a day. Poor Danny's on that.
Then he got canceled. All my Mets plays.
Were they Oklahoma coaches?
No, they were making that play.
I hope that made it.